And now, for all of those listening from around the world, this is the moment you've been waiting for. It's time! And now, introducing the host, a strength and conditioning coach, real estate investor, athlete manager, and amateur food critic. He stands 5 feet 11 inches tall, and he's on the road to 185 pounds. Podcasting from around the world by way of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Presenting the one, the only, Jared Saavedra.
Welcome back to my show, the Road to 185 show. I am your host, Jared Saavedra. Today, I get to chat with Cody Davis. He's a 22-year-old real estate investor, and we get to discuss how he has accumulated such a huge portfolio in a short period of time. I believe he has close to 90 units of rental property, and he's going to tell you how he purchased all of this through seller and creative finance. Most people, when they think of real estate investing, they think you need to have a lot of money to start. People will constantly reinforce excuse after excuse on why they can't start, while people like Cody actually start. One thing I really like about Cody is that he's big on social capital and building relationships. It's what I believe sets him apart, while some other investors you may see just look at other people as a transaction. He also talks about how he positions his offers in front of sellers with confidence, and how sharing your story will bring you opportunities you never thought were possible. If you're new, please like, share, subscribe. Let's get this episode started. Episode 13 with Cody Davis. How's it going, man? You doing all right?
Yeah, doing all right. Just keeping busy.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about, man. So welcome to the Road to 185 show, man. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So this show, it's about transition, reinvention, transformation, and your story is super intriguing to me, being, the age that you are and already have the experiences that you have. Tell us a little bit about the transition from from a part-time gymnastics instructor to a full-time real estate investor.
Yeah, well, it definitely didn't happen overnight, but I had coached gymnastics through my high school years. And when I got out of high school, I decided to go to a community college for business. And probably 2 quarters in, I had someone message me online. They were a real estate broker in the area, and they said I should get my license and drop out of college. So I did that. And I didn't sell a whole lot. I didn't have a lot of family or friends in the business. And by a lot, I mean I didn't have any. And so I didn't get any sales. And I started learning from him. If you stick with it, it'll work out. Practice the numbers, start reaching out to people. And through that, I started learning the math on small multifamily, duplex, triplex, fourplex. And about 9 months after I got started, I bought a seller finance 12plex to kick off the career.
Wow. That's intense for sure. Tell me about that deal. I was going to go into one of your other deals, but how did that kind of come about? What are the resources that you use to kind of educate yourself on the process before jumping to something like that?
Well, the 12plex, that was the very first deal I'd ever done. And my family had never bought a rental property before. Didn't have a lot of guidance there. And I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but that was a deal that was on the market. And they offered what's called seller financing, meaning that I didn't need a bank loan. And essentially I borrowed hard money rate, like really expensive money for the down payment from an investor based out of the real estate brokerage that I was at. And the seller financed the rest. So I was able to buy this thing with a signature, and it cash flowed day one.
Awesome. And even with that interest rate, it's still cash flowed.
Yep. still cash flowed a little over $800 a month.
Okay. And so what were some of your other struggles once you first started in real estate? What were some of the other challenges?
Well, I didn't know anything, and I thought I did. Being 19 years old, I thought I knew a lot, and I didn't know anything about the business. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know who I needed to talk to. I didn't know how to fix problems or talk to tenants or manage properties. So I had a big struggle learning how to get through all that. But at the end of the day, it came down to just meeting with people that had done what I wanted to do. And I got to learn from them. And through that, I grew my skill set and things got easier over time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then so from that point, so was it a year? Was it 2 years? I mean, you've only been in the game for what, 3 or 4 years altogether, right?
Just shy of 3 now.
Just shy of 3. Okay. So from going from a 12-plex to the next big one, I mean, that's a triple, right? It's a 30, it was a 35 or 36?
I had bought a 12, a 6, and then a 38.
Oh my goodness. Okay. 38. So even with that deal right then and there, how did you find it? Obviously all of your experiences with, the 2 other 6s and the 12 obviously helped with that. How did you find it? Kind of, how did you fund it? Was it kind of the same investor, same kind of interest rate? Talk to me through that process. Cause that's something that I'm super interested in. That's why I've been following you quite a bit. Ever since your interview with Bigger Pockets, I'm like, that's exactly what I want to get into. So selfishly, I get to learn alongside the audience here.
Yeah, the 38 was a different deal. Prior to doing the 38, I had bought 2 12-plexes and a 6-plex, and I had structured all of it as debt. I had borrowed the down payment from investors. They were different every time. And I borrowed the rest through seller financing. To this day, I've never had a bank loan. The 38 was the one that was a little different because I bought it. It was seller finance, and I bought it for $2 million. Seller finance, $1.7 million. The problem with that deal was I had no money and I needed $300,000. So I had about 300,000 reasons why I couldn't do that deal. I ended up bringing in equity partners, which I later cashed out. But a lesson that I learned is that equity costs you more tomorrow and debt costs you more today, because you got to make your mortgage payment regardless. But if you have an equity partner, if there's no cash flow, there's no cash flow. The problem is with equity is you got to buy them out in the future, and so it costs more. So I structured it as equity. Looking back on it, I probably would have done it as a loan, as debt. But I brought in 3 partners for the 100,000 each. They did 100, 100, 100, bought it with a signature. And then I did have a little bit of money with my business partner, Christian, that he did a HELOC on a house and I did a house flip. So I had a little bit of money for reno. But we had contributed $100,000 as well into renovations. And once we got the cash flow up on the asset, we were able to cash out the equity partners. When you bring on new income, it can support new debt. So actively, Christian and I are the only people on that deal. We're doing our first bank loan, our first refinance, and that'll lower our payment significantly.
Okay. So it was through the refinance process with the bank, or was it still through seller financing? You just able to refinance along with them?
So I am refinancing out of the seller finance note right now with a bank. This will be my first bank loan, and it should be easier to do it on this than it would be to do on some of the smaller properties because the cash flow is higher. Okay.
And how do you position yourself being younger, right? How do you position yourself to a seller that, I mean, for them to have an asset that's $3 million, they've obviously, they know a thing or two, and they're probably pretty wealthy themselves. How do you position yourself in that deal for them to make, your offer attractive compared to other people?
Yeah, well, instilling confidence comes down to, you have to transfer the confidence from yourself to them. And so if you're not super confident in the beginning, then it's going to come down to just building up your skills to where you can perform. 38 was not my first deal. I had done a few to build my confidence because growing up, I was super, super nervous, very introverted. And doing that today, if I was introverted, it'd be very hard to do that. It'd be very hard to position myself. But today, going out there as a younger investor, I'm just being myself. I'm not dressing to impress. I'm going to show up as me, and they're either going to like it or they're not, but I'm going to let them know that, hey, I can perform. And even if I'm a little nervous, I have to believe that I can make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So few things with that. So that 12plex, how, with the interest rate being so high, were you just kind of cool? Were you just kind of cool paying that interest rate every single month because it still made sense for you because it cash flowed? Or what was kind of the exit strategy eventually there? Like, what are some other ways besides, since you just said that you refinanced out of it through a bank, which makes 100% sense to pay off your equity partners? What are some other strategies that you're able to get the money back to an investor?
Well, I had paid on the 38. I had paid off I cashed out the equity partners before the bank loan.
Okay.
And it's hard to do that in the beginning.
Right. That's
you get your first two deals. You just have to buy time. I only have two criteria when I'm going out, two qualifying questions. How do I buy it? And how do I never lose it? That's the only way I look at real estate. Yes, it has to be in a great location. I'm not going to compromise on that. But after we establish that, how do I buy it? How do I never lose it? Because if I can answer those two questions, I'm set. The hard money on the first deal, I figured out how I was going to buy it. The question of how I never lose it comes down to long-term debt and cash flow. The 90% loan from the seller was a 30-year fully amortized mortgage, meaning that I never have to pay it off early. It'll just pay itself off like a house. And it cash flowed day one. So to solidify and make sure that I'm never going to lose it, I just had to figure out how do I pay it off. And I ended up paying off that. It was originally a 1-year loan for the down payment. I extended it. It cost money that I ended up using the cash flow to pay, but it took 2 years to pay that off. And in the meantime, I had been buying other stuff because the more I bought, more cash flow I had, the easier it was to pay off the first loan. And the way that I played the game is expand really quickly and then be a really good money manager and use all the cash flow to handle the mortgages.
Yeah, absolutely. So I saw you on an interview when they asked you, hey, like, are you looking for cash flow or more appreciation? You said, like, I want it all. I want it all. Kind of explain that philosophy and kind of that mentality, because I'm very similar to that. It's like, I'm not looking for just one particular thing. There can be a balance or somewhat of a balance in between both of those.
Yeah. Some people just buy for cash flow and their equity never builds. And, that's fine. They'll pay down the loan over time or they won't. It depends how they structure their debt or if they pay cash. But I don't want to buy in the Midwest where stuff isn't going to appreciate as quickly because I want to multiply my money. The problem is if you buy just for appreciation and you can't hold it because you can't cash flow it, well, it doesn't matter how much it's worth in 5 years if you lose it. So my thought process was, let's buy small to mid-sized multifamily that is valued on the income, so that as I get the income up, the value goes up and the cash flow goes up. So I'm getting the best of both worlds. I just bought a seller finance building where the average rent was $500 and it's still below market today, but we're up over $940 average today.
Wow.
That's a huge rental bump. We didn't just take that to the tenants and say, hey, you got to pay more. We took over management and some of the tenants ended up shuffling around to other rentals. And when they leave, we remodel it and then bring the rent up. And the average rent over there is closer to $1,100. We're at anywhere from $9 to $975. But the cash flow goes way up for when it was at $500 and the value goes way up because it nets more money. It's worth more to the next person.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you, really everyone, how did they evaluate the difference of, a fourplex and below to commercial, what is 5 units or more? I actually just found this out, within this last year. I had no idea. When I was looking for these type of deals, I was kind of comparing, trying to find comps with bigger complexes. And little did I know that, about cap rate and stuff. I know you're not kind of your philosophy or mentality on that as well. Cap rate, you could explain that for sure, but kind of for the newbie investor, explain the difference between how to kind of approach and how to evaluate both of those types of real estate.
Yeah. So with houses, duplex, triplex, and fourplex, it's valued based on similar properties next door. And that's it. So if there's a house down the street from your house and it's identical, they're going to comp it based on that sale. On 5 units plus, it's based on the income. You could have a 10-plex and I could have a 10-plex and they could be exactly the same. But now the beauty is if I'm a better manager than you, if you're getting 50,000 a year and I'm getting 80,000 a year, think about it like in an actual investment. The one that pays more is going to be worth more. Someone can pay a higher price and get the same exact return. So while your property is exactly the same year built, everything's beautiful. If mine makes more money because I managed it better, someone can afford to pay more for mine. And they're going to get a commercial loan, which is based a lot more based on the income and the performance of the property than it would be on a single family all the way up to 4-plex, because they're going to judge you a lot more on the smaller deals than the bigger deals, because the bigger deals can usually afford to pay for themselves than management.
Absolutely. So explain like the cap rate and how that can change over time.
Yeah, a lot of people love the cap rate. Bigger pockets made that big. Cap rate is not the most important thing out there. It's actually one of the least important pieces. And
didn't you and Christian get some flack for that, for saying that?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, but no, it makes sense though. Yeah, no, keep going. It makes 100% sense to me. I feel the same way.
Cap rate is the cash on cash return if you paid cash, meaning if you're going out and you're buying a $100,000 duplex in the Midwest, and at the end of the year, after all expenses paid, you paid cash for it. You put $8,000 of cash flow in your pocket. That's an 8% cap rate. Now, if you only netted $4,000 on a $100,000 cash purchase, well, now you're getting a 4% cap rate. And the idea is you can do apples to apples comparison on storage units, single family rentals, land leasing. You can do it on farms, but you can see, okay, what would I actually make on my cash if I wrote a check for it? And the reason that people do that is because everybody's debt is different. You can do seller finance debt at 0% interest, or you can do bank loans today at 6 and 7%, hard money at 12. Everybody's debt is variable. So they just want something across the board that can be used to say, okay, this is similar and different than this.
Yeah, that's spot on. What do you think someone, and you've probably dealt with this before, maybe you haven't quite yet, what would be the motivation for a seller to sell their property at a 0% interest? Like I've heard people talk about it. Pace Morby is someone who I also follow as well. And, it seems like he always comes across this, and I have zero, for the tax benefits and stuff, but that could be really with any seller finance deal. But what is it about 0% that people would even entertain that?
Yeah, so it's just a little different philosophy, but if you do 0%, the way the amortization schedule works, it'd be hard to map it out on this without a graph, but it can adjust the payments quite a bit. But in return, the seller can get a significantly higher price. And so instead of just paying an interest payment, they're basically taking on the interest to the actual purchase price, but it could actually lower the monthly payment to the investor.
Okay. So kind of giving them what they want, or closer to what they want as far as the actual sales price. And it kind of lets you spread that over time. Okay. That makes sense for sure. You're someone that's really big on, well, there's actually a lot of people that are big on building private capital, raising private capital, but you're someone that kind of takes a different approach as well. And this is why I find you really interesting in your story, is that you're big on like human capital, on social capital, as opposed to that. How would you explain to people who come to you, or what's your response to it when they come to you and say, hey, I want to raise private funds, I want to find private lenders? What's kind of your explanation and kind of like your thought process before you give them, those resources or whatnot?
Yeah, a lot of people want to go find money, and I encourage folks to stop doing that. You don't need money until you have an opportunity. I've dealt with a lot of people that are getting big. Some of them are bigger than me, and some of them are just getting started. But they're all about, locking down the money first. And that's not the first step. You should find an opportunity before you start working the deal. What's the opportunity? What's the story behind the property? Instead of going out and getting a whole bunch of money, You got to have a plan. You got to have an idea for it. And it's a lot easier to come up with money when you have something that's tangible that you can show people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're big on building your network then. I mean, that kind of leads to that for sure. I seen a video on you that it was a 5-minute video. It was super informative. What are some strategies that people can do and implement right away that are fairly simple to build their network if they don't really have the resources to start?
Well, establish where you're going first. If you want to go buy 10 houses, go find someone who owns 10 houses. Work with a title company and say, hey, I want a list of people that own X amount of real estate, or I want to see a list of all the owners in this county. Can't do it in every county. Some counties it's going to cost you money. Others it won't. And so I would just go out and meet with people that have done what you want to do and give them a call, try and pick their brain over coffee. That's exactly how I did what I did as quickly as I did. I just went and met with people that had bought a whole bunch of multifamily. Some of these people owned half a city. And I just wanted to learn how they did it. I'm flying out to Colorado to meet with a family who ended up buying a ton of LA. And they have a very, very low amount of debt. I mean, I'm talking hundreds of units. It's incredible. So I'm going and meeting with the people that have done things I have no idea how they did. And through that, I built out a network of very sophisticated investors that give me a little different perspective than I could get out of a book or even the people that are local to where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you leverage your story, and how would you suggest and recommend to others, like, hey, you got to put yourself out there at some point. People got to know what you're doing in order for them to take an interest in what you're doing.
Yeah. So I mapped it out as 3 sectors. You got relatable points, which is your past. You got your goals, which is your future, where you're going, and significance, which at the end of the day is why you're doing what you're doing, why you're going where you're going. People will talk to you based on your past. They'll work with you based on your future, and they'll buy into who you are based on your significance. And most people know their story. Very few know how to present it. So I would figure out, if I was starting over, how to go communicate with others and effectively communicate my story. So you got to know what you're going to share with people. Even if you got an opportunity, you get to go share it with people that are out there that own real estate or own a business or startup. Mm-hmm. If you don't know what you're going to share, who you are, you may know who you are, but you may not know how to share that with people the right way. Now you're just at an impasse, you're stuck. So I would figure out how to map that out and probably map it on a piece of paper, draw out the little circle, quantify what's where, and practice sharing it with folks.
Yeah, absolutely. When people ask you, like, hey, Cody, what's your why? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, it's evolved a bit. And at the very beginning, I mean, I'm a car guy. I love cars.
Okay.
And I realized I wasn't going to be able to afford the stuff I wanted to do. The cars I wanted to buy, working a job. I'm just not that smart. I've gotten smarter over the years with the real estate stuff, but when it comes to life skills, I've never been the smartest person. So I was like, I'm not going to get a great job that could afford that life. And as I got into real estate, I was like, well, shoot, I could retire my mom. And so I've got to stabilize a few of the properties I've got. But this year I'll have enough cash flow to knock out her biggest payment, which is housing. I can just knock that out this year. And so that's a big thing for me. I want to give her the option. Yeah, I want to give her the option to do what she wants when she wants. She'll probably keep working, but she won't have to, is the goal. And so knock out housing. And if there's something else that she needs, then I'll work on taking care of that.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure she's super thankful for that, and to see your growth and be able to help others and give others opportunities. Any final thoughts on, anything else out there that you would tell kind of newbie investors who, I mean, there's a lot of them, man. I mean, I'm sure you talk to people all the time that are always on the fence. They're just consuming so much content, but there's no action behind that. You got any final words for those people that they're probably listening? Our podcast is with young entrepreneurs. So those are the people really listening to this. So they don't know a ton about real estate. They're in different fields or whatnot. But I'm super passionate about it. I'm super interested in it. And I think, these kind of conversations are going to be able to spark a lot of people's interest. What are some things that you would tell them to kind of get them going, get them started?
Yeah, keep it simple. If it's not simple, you don't need to do it. At the end of the day, there's a lot of people that are complicated in the game. It's not complicated. The math is really easy. Income less expenses equals cash flow. You want that to be a positive number. How do you buy it? How do you never lose it? It is really that simple. Everybody's overcomplicating the game. And just because it makes money doesn't mean it makes sense. And just because it makes sense doesn't mean it makes money. There's a lot of shiny object syndrome where things sound cool. Digital salmon, crypto fish. Like, cool, you can make a little bit of money with it, but go repeat that over and over for a long period of time. Not just the past couple of years, but what's been around forever. Everybody needs housing. Yes, it's fun to have some fun money, but as we saw, that's not the most stable when you're investing in things that haven't been around for decades. So invest into things that have solid principles behind them. People need housing. They're willing to pay for that. And if you build a business off of cash flow for the long term, your odds of success go up.
Absolutely, man. Cody, thank you so much for your time, man. If people have any more questions for you, how can they get a hold of you? Do you all have, you and Christian have your own podcast or?
We don't.
Oh, okay. Or a YouTube channel. Yeah.
Yeah, we are on YouTube. If you just look up Cody and Christian Multifamily Strategy or Christian Osgood or Cody Davis Real Estate, it'll pop up.
Okay. Awesome, man. Cody, I appreciate you, man. We'll be in touch for more, maybe another episode at some point.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, man. I appreciate it.